Hello, this is Christian, and welcome to the Relational Database Coding Class. This is a PHP MySQL course. I want to make sure that we have all these IDEs and the server environment and databases servers installed, just to make sure we have everything up and running before we can move forward. So here in Unit 1 in the Prepare folder, most of you have done this already, which is great. But I will show you again just one more time just to make sure everybody is caught up. So I ask you to install one of these, okay? And the reason why is because it comes with a local Apache server, which is a web server. You will need that if you run your files on this server. I'll show you how to do that. You need the MySQL database. In this case, it'll be the MariaDB, which is similar or very identical to MySQL, and PHP. Now it has some other stuff too, but we just need these two basically. Okay, so go ahead and then if you click on this link here and just download to your correct system, install that. Okay, so once you install, then go ahead and then open that XAMPP folder at a panel. If you search for XAMPP, it will show up, and just click on it. And then what you see is something that will look similar to this. Okay, so you see the XAMPP control panel. And all these modules are maybe different, or I think it may be identical if you have the right version. But what we need are the Apache and the MySQL modules to be started. Okay, and so this is a web server. Okay, that means that if I open a browser, let me open a new tab here. And I want to make sure I didn't close the other one. Oops, which I did. Okay, so let's just say, let me turn these off here. If I go to the URL of localhost, okay, if you type in localhost on the browser, you may or may not see something. Here it says this site can't be reached because I don't have a server created here. If you have something, you might see the Windows IIS server, okay, which is a default on most Windows systems. I think I deleted mine, so I don't have it. So you need it. You need a server to run locally, and also to run PHP. So that's what Apache comes in. So if I turn on Apache, if I click Start, and if that turns green, that means it's good. If it turns red or something, then you have some issues. Okay, and as you can see, the page loads automatically. It goes into localhost // and then dashboard. Okay, so you may wonder where this dashboard comes from. Okay, well, let's talk about this panel for a little bit here. If you look at the port numbers here, you have the port 80 and the port 443. 80 is the default, right? The default public port. All web servers run on port 80. So if you go to google.com, Facebook, whatever, Instagram, they all run on port 80. It's a public port that allows all browsers, all systems to access. Okay, so right now it's using port 80 for my machine. If yours doesn't work because maybe the IIS server is already running port 80, then you have a conflict. If that's the case, then you won't have a green color here. And so what that means is that if I go up to the URL here, if I change the localhost to add a colon and then I put a port 80 there, okay, that's what it means. It's defaulted to port 80. It doesn't stick because it knows that that's a default. Also, the localhost here is the domain. If you think of this as a domain name like Google or Facebook or my domain or something, right? So localhost is the default domain for all machines. Doesn't matter if you use laptop, your desktop, or whatever it is, right? It's all locally. And this is equivalent to the IP address of 127.0.0.1. Okay, as you can see, it's the same thing. It's a localhost IP address. That's the same thing as saying go to google.com, right? If you go to Google, because Google is a domain name, if you go there, you see that it's the Google domain name. I could put Google's IP address here if you want. It will take you there, right? So just to show you that really quick, if you go and type in CMD, hit enter to load that command so you can get Google's IP address. I can go and ping google.com, and it gives me the IPv6 address. I want an IPv4, so I'm going to do it again. Ping, put a -4 for IPv4 version, google.com. Okay, so these are this is Google's IP address. So what that means, I can copy this. Okay, copy that and paste it on the URL. Remove the colon. Okay, if I do that, hit enter, and you see that it takes me to Google. Let me try it again over here. Okay, hit enter, and as you can see, it takes you to Google. So it's the same thing. That's same as localhost. Okay. Now I'm going to go back and put back to localhost. What this dashboard comes from. Okay, the dashboard, if you look at this, your XAMPP folder, wherever you store, has a folder called htdocs. So if I go to my browser, browse my file explorer, and if I go into my C drive, I installed inside the C drive under a folder called XAMPP. Okay, in the XAMPP folder, I have a htdocs folder. The htdocs is the root directory of your server. So here is the dashboard. So this dashboard folder corresponds to this dashboard on the site here. I mean, you may wonder, how does it know to go there? Why doesn't it go to one of these folders? Well, because it runs on this PHP file. Okay, so if I look at this PHP file, it actually, as you can see inside the Notepad++, it redirects to the dashboard, okay, because it does it this way. You can modify, of course, but that's how you go into dashboard. So the XAMPP folder under the htdocs is where your server lives. That's where you have your server here. Okay, so to run PHP file, you can then write PHP file here, right? For example, this PHP index, PHP is here. I could very well create a new file in here, just say a new text file, right? And I can use this to say my php.php and just say yes. So that's a PHP file. We can open this in Notepad++, and let me close all the rest. And I can say things like echo hello. That's a PHP statement. I can close that. Now I save that file. It's inside my htdocs. So here, instead of going to the dashboard, I would say I'm going to put here my PHP. Right, so you can see this is a PHP file. I can run a PHP file using localhost because of this Apache server. Okay, if you turn this off, then this is going to fail because it does not know how to. It doesn't have a server for one thing, and it doesn't know how to run PHP file. Okay, so that's why you need this. So you can turn that on. The second thing is if you have an issue with the port number, you can change this port number to something else. Again, the port 80 is the default for the public. The 443 is a secure port, like HTTPS port. If you want to change to a different port because of conflict, you can turn the other server off, or you can use a different port number by going to the config file, click config, the httpdconf file, and then here you just search for a port number 80 and change that to something like maybe 8080, right? So I can change that to 8080. I think there's another place in here, if I remember correctly. Somewhere down here it would say port 80 as well. And so the idea is to find every place where you have a port 80 and change that all to 8080. I can find it. No, it's down here somewhere. So here it is, server name localhost 80, change that to 8080. And then just save this file. Not save as, just save it. Okay, Control S to save it. Once you save that file, and then now you go back to your panel, stop it, and then rerun it again, it should change to port 8080 as you can see here. So now up here it's going to fail because I don't have port 8080. Then you have to go into your localhost :8080 to run your file. So here it is. running at port 8080. Okay. Okay, so the next thing is MySQL. Make sure that it's also on. It should use port 3306. That's the default port number. And to ensure that that works, you're going to create, well, I'm going to go back and load the admin here, back to the dashboard. Okay. Well, let's go back to the dashboard. Let me remove this. Okay, so here on the right menu, there's a link that says phpMyAdmin. If you click on that link, it's going to take to your port number, 8080 in this case. If you don't have it, it should be blank. And then phpMyAdmin. It loads this page. This is the interface where you can have access to your database. So that runs this MySQL database. Now, if you have this stop, it's not running, you'll see that you cannot run phpMyAdmin because it relies on that database. Okay, so make sure that's running so you can access your database. Again, this is when we start to make DB connections. But for now, we don't need it yet, but just make sure it works. Again, just run that. And here I already have a few of my databases. So to create databases is very simple. Just click on the new here. Okay, or up here, put a database name, for example, test. Click that, create, and it's going to show you here it has no table in there. It's empty. Like these have some of them, right? So I could go ahead and create new tables and the number of columns and go. Okay, you can also use SQL statements if you want. Just type in, click on SQL, and make sure you're using the database called test. In this example, I could say create table, and then do your table thing, right? ID int, and then primary key, auto decrement, increment, things like that. Okay, and then you can create your table this way. Actually, I'll give it a table name. Call maybe users or something. Okay, and then I can say go ahead and create that, and here's my table created. It's called users, and it has one field. Okay, if you look at the structure, you'll see one field. Okay, if you don't like it, you can modify here, or you can keep adding more fields here visually. That's great, right? If you don't like that, you can also go into the command prompt. If I go back to the panel, click on the shell command, it takes you to XAMPP folder again. If you type in MySQL, it takes you right to the MariaDB, which is the bench work. And here you can type show databases and put a semicolon, always put a semicolon. And here are the databases you just saw up here in the phpMyAdmin, same thing. And if I want to see what's inside test, I could just go and use test. And now I'm selecting test. To see my tables in test, I just say show tables. And I have one table here, right? And so on. So now I can just select, everything from users, and there should be none. Okay, you can use that. I don't recommend it. It's just too slow, but that's how you would use it. Okay, so that's the XAMPP and MySQL, or MySQL. Now that's the correct term, MySQL, not MySQL. If you have any questions, let me know about this. The next thing is PHPStorm. Okay, so over here, back to the panel here, I ask you to install one of these IDEs. I will be using PHPStorm. You're free to use any one of these. All these are free except for PHPStorm is not free, but again, it's free for students. So when you go there, just make sure you click this link here to register in the student area. Okay, if you go back to the home page, for example, and if you happen to register from here, okay, if you just go up here and click, account and register, okay, I already have it here. It's not gonna work. So just make sure you go to the student site /student, or if you go to the very bottom of the main page, you see that says get your student pack. Click on that, and then go ahead and apply. Okay, once you click apply, it's going to ask you to select one of these, instructor or students. Just put your name here, put your school email address here. It's going to send the email to your account. You need to authenticate it. It's going to take you back to this page again where you will put a password and so on to authenticate. After that, then you can go ahead and download all their products, all of these, whatever you want to use. And you can use them for a full year. So then again, just go Tool and download the PHPStorm, install it. Okay, once you install it and you run it, it's going to ask you to authenticate. Okay, so ask you to authenticate, just use your JetBrains account to authenticate and put your password, and then once you have that done, then it should be good to go, and you should see the page running. Let me turn all these off for now. Okay, so here is the PHPStorm. After you authenticate, you will see this welcome screen. And here you're going to create a new project, right? Click on New. My default is in the XAMPP folder htdocs. The reason why I put that there again is because if I don't run my file directly from PHPStorm, I can still run through the browser I showed you earlier, right? Through here. Okay, so but usually when you run PHP file inside PHPStorm, we're not going to switch back and forth between the two. Okay, we just need to get PHP installed. So I'm going to have a new folder called maybe like I'll just call it my test PHP. Okay, the environment here, you may not have these. If you don't have it, don't worry. We're going to fix this. Let's just say that you may not see this. You might have none, and the language may not be here either. So whatever it is, just say create. I'll show you a typical example where some errors might occur. So here's my folder, my test inside XAMPP folder. If I go to the directory inside the htdocs, you will see that I have a my test PHP here. Right inside there's nothing in there. And I'm going to create my first file. Do a right click here and then new PHP file. Yeah, I can call this index. Just type it OK, click OK, and I should present it with this new PHP file. Okay, so here I can say echo hi there, and if I save this, and here again it's inside here, so I can run this from my browser. I can just copy my test here, go to my browser up here, and change it to that. So here's hi there, right? I'm running from the local host, or I can run directly from within PHP. In here, I just gotta go up to the right, and you'll see one of these browsers install on your machine. So just click on, let's just say again, Chrome. It will load Chrome. It will try to load. If you can see, it will say it has some error. It says cannot be found, has a bad gateway. Inside PHPStorm, you have this error down here. It says there's no interpreter found. So you need to configure that. Okay, that means it needs to find the PHP interpreter. So go ahead and click that link. It takes you to the similar screen we saw earlier, right? So the language level has to be 5.6 or later. I recommend maybe just go into 7. Okay, we're using PHP 7. The interpreter is, if this is the first time you use, you may not have anything here. If you use it already, you will have PHP 7 here. Let's just say you don't. So what you do is, it's inside this folder. So back to XAMPP. Okay, inside XAMPP. Inside XAMPP here you see a folder called PHP. Inside the PHP, if you scroll down, there's a php.exe. And that's the file we want to run. Okay, so back to PHPStorm. Go ahead and click Browse. Browse inside. You may not have this by default. Mine is already there, that's why. But if you don't see this, if there's nothing here, right? If you have nothing like this, okay, you need to add one. So just type add, and then you can go to local and just call it PHP. Okay, and the executable file is that php.exe, this file here. So just go look for it. Go here. It's inside my C drive. Okay, it's inside my C drive, inside the XAMPP folder, inside the PHP folder, and there's a PHP exe here. Okay, so just click OK, and then you should just click OK again, and now we have that interpreter, and you can click apply or click OK, and that should be good. And then now go back to your browser and refresh, and you should see that file being executed running. So you have the same result. This is on your localhost on your Apache server. This is on a different server that is created by PHPStorm. As you can see, it has a different port number. 63343 is the default port for PHPStorm. This is the one you set in the other panel. And then the folder followed by the file followed by a session ID. Okay, so all your PHP files will be created this way, and you just run directly from here and then execute. Okay, and now even if I go back and turn off my that XAMPP, if I go back here to the control panel, and if I remove or turn all these off, you don't need that actually because they'll consume spaces. Then you can go back and just remove this tab. You don't need that anymore. Just local host followed by the port number, which is created by PHPStorm by default. And so do all your work here until later on you might have some issues with forms, and when that comes, we'll have some different ways how to do that as well. Okay, so I hope this is helpful. And if you have any questions, please post in the forum or in Slack or send me an email, and I'll be more than happy